Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm a PPC Team Leader at Journey Further, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by Mohammad, and we're going to be talking about AI and its application within paid search.
Thanks so much for having me, Hannah. I'm Mohammad. I've been at Google for 4 years now, and I currently work as an Omnichannel Specialist in the MMS Retail UKI team.
So I'm going to start by asking if you can provide an overview of how AI is already being used within the Google Ads platform.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think there are three key elements of AI that help us already within Google Ads. Firstly, it comes into creation. Secondly, it comes into how we serve on Google Ads. And thirdly is about the insights that we can gain from it. So when we talk about creation, we talk primarily about our assets, right? So for example, 15% of search queries every day are brand new. How do we make sure our ad copy is ready to respond to that? So that's where, for example, dynamic search ads come in, which is a great example of AI, or responsive search ads as well. And we're going even further with, automatically generated assets as well. Secondly, when it comes to how we serve, this is one I'm sure many people will be familiar with, which is smart bidding, for example. So smart bidding, it's an amazing application of AI using multiple different signals about user intent, about the nature of the business itself and what goals you want to achieve. And it uses AI to achieve that. And then thirdly, and I think this is going to be a big part, is that insights piece. So, you've created the right ads, you've served them, what can we learn from them? And that's where pieces like the insights page comes in. That's where a lot of the data that comes from there is all generated using AI. And that's really the three main areas that AI is being used in Google Ads right now.
I guess a lot of the things you've mentioned there, they've existed for a while now, thinking about things like DSA, smart bidding. I think we've all been using AI, whether or not we kind of realised it in those terms. So why now do you think there's this sudden buzz around the word AI and people are so much more receptive to, I guess, using that terminology?
Yeah, it's a really important point you mentioned there, that AI is not something brand new that's necessarily come overnight, right? A lot of these things have already been in Google Ads, in the world of marketing for a few years now. So what has created that change, you ask? So I think there are a couple of things here. Firstly is the broader landscape in terms of the broader world of technology and how we interface with it. AI is probably one of the words of this year, I would say, for sure. So it's something that's been brought to the public consciousness. And that is the case, of course, but I think equally the second part of it is that this is where we've been heading all along. So Google for many years now have been developing through their large language models, through their various applications of AI. All of these things have been in the pipeline for a few years already. So we're at a place now where the technology is mature enough, it's ready to deliver for advertisers. And that's why I think this year specifically, we've seen a lot more of it come into our consciousness.
And do you feel like there's any specific industries or any types of campaigns that have seen particular, benefits from these advancements in AI?
I think industry-wise, I think every industry can benefit from it. I think there's no particular one industry that will, gain more benefit than others. But I think when you mention campaign types, I think that's where the real differentiation is, because AI is available for everyone to use. It depends how we all as practitioners use it, right? So I'll give you an example. Broadmatch recently revamped as an example of some of our best AI from the Google Ads perspective, making sure that we reach the right user with the right intent, with the right ad creative as well. And Broadmatch at the moment, it's been projected, or it's been estimated to deliver 20% more conversions at the same CPA compared to standard campaign targeting. So that's an example where advertisers using Broadmatch will benefit more from AI than advertisers not using it. And that's a basic example. Going forwards, there's going to be things like automatically generated creatives, for example, that if you're making use of them, if you know how to use them, and if you use them in the best way, you're going to benefit from them.
I think we kind of touched on it then, but thinking more about the future of AI, what do you think that looks like? Obviously in relation to search, but particularly the impact that that'll have on PPC.
Future of AI, I think has many implications. Personally, I look forward to. I already use AI as my fashion assistant. Well, I should have used it today, I think. But look, I think it's going to have implications on everyone's experiences with the internet and how we interface with daily life. One of the things that excites me, for example, as a user, is making sure we get relevant as possible experiences on search. So I'll give you an example that, if I searched for a pair of trainers before, the results I would receive would be a lot more similar to what you would receive, right? If we look 5, 6, 7 years back. But now we're at a stage where if I were to search for shoes and you were to search for shoes, we'd get very different results, right? I mean, you might have different styles of shoes, different colors, based on our intent, right? So that's one exciting area when it comes to AI, and that's going to continue. So recently we've got immersive search experiences, right? So things like VR, AR try-ons, things like 3D models. All of these things help create more magical experience for the user. And when you have a more engaging magical experience for the user, they're more likely to engage with the content, engage with the business behind all of it.
I think one of the big announcements from Google Marketing Live was around AI-generated creatives. And that's certainly been like a big point of debate for us internally at Journey Further since that announcement came. So I guess to start, like, what advantages do you see for advertisers in regards to that development?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think it's a game changer. I think how many times, before, I'm sure when you've spoken with your clients or when we speak with businesses, there's so many limitations into what they can do, right? And understandably so, because they've got the small task of running a whole business together, right? So when we look at creatives, for example, in this instance, a number of times we run into the issues of, either we don't have the creative in-house capacity or we don't have the budget, we don't have the expertise, so to speak, to achieve these things. And things like automatically generated image assets, they're going to enable so many more businesses to accelerate top quality assets that will help their business grow. So, I think it's really exciting, and I'm very excited to see what advertisers do with it, right? Because it is AI driven. But ultimately, advertisers power what the AI actually does. So I'm really excited to see the creativity that comes out of all of that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely something we talked about internally as well, is, we do see quite a long lag when it comes to having to get time from in-house creatives and designers, or, we can offer it to clients in-house, but then we have to kind of charge an additional fee. So kind of just the possibilities that will be open to us being able to just manage that with the client.
Absolutely.
And just that time saving. I think one of the big concerns was really how do we maintain that brand control and ensure that the content fits in line with overall tone of voice when it comes to AI-generated creative.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand where you're coming from. You want to make sure everything is consistent with the brand language, with the, you want to make sure you have certain brand controls in place. And that's where I think the cooperation with AI comes into play, right? I think sometimes we can get somewhat carried away with AI, that we can think, it's going to do everything for us in the end, right? But you can think of it almost as a car of sorts, right? In the sense that a car has an engine that lets us drive quickly to places faster than walking, right? But we still need to, for now, we still need to steer it, right? We still, at the very basic, we need to tell it where to go, right? Even if we have self-driving cars. So that's the key thing, really, is whatever you input into your AI tools, it's going to follow what you input. So when it comes to brand control, for example, or tone of voice, for example, making sure you have that consistent tone of voice throughout your website, throughout all of your assets that you create in your ads account, those things are going to be fed into AI. So, one of the things that people use Bard for sometimes is give me a poem in the style of, I don't know, Gordon Ramsay, for example, right? And it uses language similar to what Gordon Ramsay actually talks like, probably that I can't share right here because it's Gordon Ramsay. But that's an example of how AI uses what you give it. Right, there's so much examples of Gordon Ramsay talking. There's examples of how he speaks. Similarly, how your brand speaks, how you want to use that language and you want to keep that brand control. That's how AI will operate as well.
AI learns from us and we learn from AI, and it's not one or the other.
Yes.
It's kind of a bit of a cycle.
Yes.
Obviously, with it's still a relatively new concept and it's still kind of being adopted by people. At what point, or do you think there is a point where we're using so much AI-generated content on websites for copy and images that have been created by AI, that AI starts to plateau in terms of its learning? Like, where's that balance between we still need to be giving that input so that AI continues to learn?
That's a fascinating question. I think the crucial thing is that AI will always be there to support us in terms of our decisions, in terms of our output. The key thing really will be throughout this, we will need people with a hand on the steering wheel, so to speak, right? So the direction, for example, of a brand, in terms of for example, if we say what's the language that a brand uses to define itself, for example, that will need to be set, by people who know the brand inside out and who have the full understanding of the meaning of the brand, right? AI will be the means as which they use to generate that specific, the specific assets or the specific content. But there will always need to be that navigation, I think. And for the near future, I think that will definitely be the case.
Yeah, perfect. So we can't rely too heavily on.
I think we can trust it. We can rely on it.
We still need to have some input.
Yeah, to set the direction, to say where we want to be, that's going to be crucial.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that, for example, in, again, to go back to a very specific Google Ads example, bid strategies, right? We know the benefits of smart bidding and we enjoy those benefits, but we still set, for example, a target CPO, target return on ad spend, right? So that's an example of where we're benefiting from AI, but equally AI is benefiting from our input.
So I feel like we've started to kind of delve into the next question I had, which is all about like the role of PPC specialists and agencies.
Yeah.
What role do you see them playing in the future versus how it is at the moment, and what's their role versus what AI is going to be capable of?
I think it's very exciting. I think there are, we've talked a lot about how AI will enable better experiences for users. It will enable more engaging, interactive experiences. It will enable more creativity through things like automatically generated assets, for example. I think all of that, like we mentioned, will need people to be behind it, right? And I'll give you this example that if we look maybe 6-7 years ago, what was the role of a PPC specialist then? A lot of the time was spent on manipulating bids, right?
Yeah.
Manual CPC and that kind of thing. Over time, where we've reached now, less time is spent on bids, more time spent on assets, for example, right? If we're looking forward, what we can see is, in terms of the role of a PPC specialist, the most successful PPC specialists will be elevating their role. So we look, for example, at cases where assets will be automatically generated, right? So PPC specialists might not have to look into the minutiae of every single ad headline, right? What's their role going to be instead? We talk about visual experiences. Their role is going to be, how do we make sure we get that visual experience ready for the customer? How do we make sure that we have the right, video assets, for example, going into these more broader picture, areas. I think the crucial thing when it comes to the whole world of PPC generally, we look 7 years ago, for example, a lot of businesses, their PPC teams would have been measuring success by what CPC they're getting, right? Recently, we've gone into a mood where we're focusing much more on business results, right? So PPC teams nowadays are more looking at what's the return on investment that we're driving for the business. And I think that's going to be the second major shift for all PPC specialists, tying yourself more to the business objectives and in that way, making a more direct link to the business, right? And I think that's where you can drive more meaningful impact rather than say, I decreased my CPCs in the last month. Say, I drove this level of profit for the business in the last month is something really to be proud of.
I think just thinking about the conversations we're having as a department and talking a lot about our role is to enhance AI's decision-making process, really. Yeah. And it's a big thing we're talking about is aligning to clients' true objectives.
That's it.
And making sure we're integrating the correct data. And just making sure that we're helping Google get as close to their end goal as possible.
Absolutely. And I'm like, how have you found that in terms of the discussion? I feel that we're at a shifting point right now, right? And it's great that you've recognized the importance of tying yourself to the client's objectives. I feel some clients still, maybe in more of the previous mindset, they'll come to you with specific, they'll come to people with specific, CPC goals, for example. I use that basic example. But there's that discussion, right, to be had about how can we help you, not just in your marketing team discussions, like in your C-level discussions, right, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of clients are very receptive to it. I think
Brilliant.
If we say, we're trying to get as close to what really is going to drive bottom line figures for you, it's very appealing to them. I think the part that becomes difficult sometimes is actually getting hold of that data and being able to integrate that within Google Ads. But I mean, we've got a data team that can work with clients to, help make sure we're uploading offline conversions, like understanding like audience segments and things like that. But ultimately, clients need to make sure that they are collecting the data, they've got a good CRM system in place, that they are, looking at audience segments and things like that. Because I think definitely moving forward, that's the kind of data that we're really going to rely on getting from clients and being able to incorporate within Google Ads.
I can't agree more with you on that. I think really, when we look at AI, one of the inputs, of course, is around, creative direction. Another key input is data, because if artificial intelligence doesn't know what we're optimizing towards, how can it have necessarily a gauge of what's successful and what's not, right? So I think, like you said, offline data is a massive thing. Again, PPC specialists, I foresee they'll be spending more, investing more in these things that previously perhaps they didn't quite have the capacity for. They'll be able to have time to build these massive value adds for the business.